a cap or a window for application periods for the dispensaries or a preference for where you would like to see them within the zoning, you can do that this evening and direct us in how we draft the regulations.
To be clear, it's not the zoning. The zoning is already allowed. It's the geographical restriction to parts of the zones or to only some of the zones. The way it started was it was in commercial, industrial, manufacturing areas, and that was to allow us to come within that San Diego case. Now what's being requested is only a portion of those zones in the city would be allowed. That focus is different, so not in conformance with the first reading, and it also creates the possibility of a CEQA issue.
Got it.
That was raised at past meetings. As long as we were broad, we're okay to define it the way we did.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate the clarification. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. We have speaker cards.
Yes. First speaker is Jack Kirk.
You know, we've enjoyed a few months working together here since around July, or I guess towards the end of August when we started. We spent many hours. I spent many hours away from my business to do this. I volunteered these hours. We've been up and I even had lunch into a marijuana dispensary, which I never thought that would happen with me. So I've learned a lot about marijuana. I've learned that there's many people in the community here that have a desire or a need to use medical marijuana and to and have their needs. So I've kind of adapted. So all of us kind of adapted, and we're trying to be open to things. But we also want to protect our community and our children because there is ill effects from the marijuana community, and we spent a lot of time working through these issues. And I'm interested in Mr. Friend's response tonight because we had kind of some thoughts that we pulled together last Thursday. We spent 4 hours together, and that we would take this ordinance and in the sake of making sure it's clear for the public, we would go to a first reading on December 5th. So we'd have time to let everybody see the final ordinance that Ms. Epstein is working on, finishing, so we can get the final draft on Wednesday. I haven't seen the final ordinance. We actually, as a group, marked it. We sat down and gave our input, and I'd like to see the final ordinance. A lot of us would. So I would personally think the ordinance, if you pass tonight, and the August 5th, the August 9th ordinance was not acceptable to us as a community. It just opens up the shenanigans of favoritism or friendships and opening up marijuana distribution throughout the city. And I think it's the wrong thing for you as a city council to do. I sat down with Mr. Friend and with our group. We've had from the other side, Elias Salinas and different ones that have been there. We've sat in the rooms together trying to work through our differences. I think we've really built a consensus. This ad hoc committee has been, I really appreciate Mr. Friend and the mayor for sitting down with us and including us. And I think that was a big difference in what happened in the past. So I would really support that you would wait till December 5th, let us get the final edited ordinance, put it in the ordinance so that we're comfortable as a larger community that there's no more than 2 dispensaries. It's limited to that north Salinas or north of 25 area that we looked at. I've spent months, I don't care about the timer, working there. You can take another moment for me. When we all sat down and we figured out the area, we sat down on a map, we looked at it. I think there's been a lot of input and a lot of thought here. And I just really encourage you to wait. Let us let us finish, get the draft by Wednesday. Let everybody in the public see it, the final draft, and then work on the first reading in December, and not accept the current ordinance as we talked about, Mr. Friend.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you.
Steve Becerra.
Hi, good evening. So tonight, I had a chance to look at what was publicized as far as the ordinance that was on the city's agenda, and that I don't speak to that ordinance because that's the ordinance that started this whole thing. That was something that a lot of people in this community didn't want. It was wide open. It was very pro medical cannabis culture, medical marijuana, and I've also had the opportunity to spend a lot of time working and providing suggestions on the new updated ordinance, which I have seen, and it's substantially different from what was posted on the city website. What is posted on the city website appears to be that very first ordinance. And last week when I saw the new ordinance, the updated one, it's substantially different. I'm encouraged that some of the suggestions from both pro and con have been taken in consideration for this updated ordinance, and I would encourage you to postpone this to the first reading for December 5th so you could actually, you as a council that haven't seen it, can see what it says, and members of this community can see what it says. You are this close, to getting ahead of it, this close to providing safe access to medical marijuana in the form of a dispensary and delivery to those people in this community that need it. It's important. So I would encourage you to do the right thing, take your time, you have time, and make sure this ordinance is the best you can do. The best you can do for not only people that need medical marijuana, but for the rest of the community who is going to be affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tim Burns.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Tim Burns, resident, District 4. I'm very encouraged by what I've heard tonight. I would have not thought I would have heard this. I, too, would encourage you to continue the matter for a new first reading on December 5th. It makes perfect sense. I understand Councilman Clower's concerns about having a conversation, but sometimes the formality gets in the way. I do have a couple questions because I, too, have not seen the new ordinance, and I have submitted things to my council representative, and I'm hopeful that there has been some conversation about those. Some of the questions that I had was, why only 600 feet from a school? Why not 1,000 feet? Why not include preschools and parks in that as well? Makes no sense to me. I'd like to know how you intend to regulate, or are you intending to regulate, butane honey oil processing? Very dangerous for many people. Even when done right, it can be dangerous. I'd like to know who's actually on the ad hoc committee. I've heard that mentioned several times, but I've yet to really clearly identify who the participants are. I'd like to know if the district attorney has been questioned about what their position is. Is this going to increase their workload, their caseload? I'd also like to know what the court's position is, because that could have an impact on the courts. I'd certainly like to know what the environmental health department's view on this is, because, again, done well, this can be done very well. Done poorly, this can have catastrophic consequences that you need to take into account. I'd like to know in the future what the city's position is moving forward with retail marijuana. I know it's not part of this, but clearly the voters have spoken, and retail marijuana is here and will be coming soon. I'd like to know if you're considering maybe a ban, such as some of the other counties, on retail until you can get a grasp on it. I'd like to know what you're intending to do for a hearing body when things get appealed, not necessarily on a planning level, but maybe on an enforcement level. To have that come back to you could be very problematic, I would suggest, and I think in reviewing the previous ordinance, that was a concern that may have been overlooked. And then finally, I think that you've heard from the voters throughout the state that there's an opportunity for a reasonable tax to be placed on marijuana. And while we may have missed that window of opportunity through the most recent election, I think you need to start looking at that too. Certainly this needs to not only cover the overhead of processing through your planning and community development, but certainly your enforcement as well as regulatory enforcement. When you approve this, you can bet your dollar that not only the people that are not in compliance you're going to be regulating or enforcing, but absolutely are going to be receiving calls from those in the industry, because otherwise it creates an unfair business practice. And so I'd ask that you look at those things, and I look forward to hearing the good works coming forward in December. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sal Palma.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Sal Palma. I've been in the medical cannabis industry for just about 7 years now. So I've been in it throughout the time that all of the California cities and counties have been drafting and enacting their ordinances. I've read through the ordinance as presented on the agenda this evening many times, and I just want to commend the ad hoc committee. It's very well written, one of the better crafted that I've seen. And I would just urge you guys to go ahead and move forward with a vote on the ordinance as it stands this evening. The ordinance as it's written gives you the flexibility to address all of the concerns that you've addressed, that the public has brought forth. By nature of it, you can implement those without having to go back, redraft, and have a first reading. I think it's also important to do that so as not to trigger CEQA. Thank you.
Steve Ludwig.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I came to support the ordinance as it was written. This is what I thought was very well written, and it made a lot of sense. Restricting to north of 25 causes some issues. I understand, I think, the intent. However, there are perfectly acceptable locations in industrial zones that will work and that meet the concerns of the citizens and any of those that are concerned. So I would encourage the passing of the original ordinance as it stands, or at least add an exception for those sites that work. I don't understand why you're just doing it to one area only. This encourages only a few select landholders to really benefit here. So I encourage you to pass the ordinance as stands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tony LeBeau.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the council to not limit the ability of other sites that are currently blighted areas in our community that can be used as additional sites for cultivation or manufacturing. By allowing or minimizing the amount of property that is going to be allowed for this manufacturing, you're going to allow only a handful of investors or land barons to monopolize essentially the industry. If you limit it to only the northern section of Highway 25 and pass on the opportunity to remove some of our blighted areas in our community, I took the opportunity and I gave you guys a parcel map of a parcel that is currently, I would call, blighted, and one of our lakefront properties, as I like to call it, over by the sewer ponds. And this lakefront property is highly blighted and has an opportunity where people are willing to spend millions of dollars in construction costs and allocate for jobs and the cost of goods sold, and of course not only construction costs but people working there. So if you limit it to Highway 25, northern of Highway 25, you're going to eliminate a lot of areas that we can, basically change from a blighted lakefront to a working industrial zone where we'll have construction, we'll have people working, and we'll have an opportunity to not let only a handful of land barons monopolize this industry. And I don't understand why we can't pass the ordinance today and then take the time to massage the ordinance at a later date, as your city council, your council here has recommended, and move forward with this so that people can then spend more time giving you more information on how you can massage or change the ordinance if you need to. I encourage you to, and I urge you guys to pass this ordinance this evening. And I'd like to also state that I have never used cannabis in any way, shape, or form, but hopefully I'll never have to use it. But if I do, I'd like to have the ability to do so. Thank you very much. And happy Thanksgiving.
J.W. Payne.
I live in District 3. How you doing? Hey, happy Thanksgiving too. Okay, I'm sorry. Now we're ready. I want to say thank you very much for taking the time and researching this. I remember several months ago I came here and I was adamant I did not want marijuana in our county at all. I didn't like it. The mayor was nice enough to allow me to go with a couple other people to go to San Jose and check the stuff out. Then the researches, and I changed my mind. I do see what it can do for medical marijuana, and I too have never smoked, ate, drink, or whatever Rob did last time he was here. But if I did have cancer, like my sister-in-law has, I would hope that I would be able to comfort. But I do like the idea of keeping it more away from town. I like that you guys are seriously looking at different zoning, keeping away from the kids, keeping away from the area. And again, I just want to commend you guys for not just voting for it and just getting it done. You guys took the time. You've been listening to everybody. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Marty Richmond.
Good evening again, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I want to take a minute to thank the City Council for the people who are members of the ad hoc committee, who were members of the ad hoc committee, and for all the work you put in. I think everybody knows where I stand. I was against it. I'll bring up Prop 64 because it does impact the medical marijuana thing. There are references directly in Prop 64. And you've been eminently fair. People have asked you for extensions in time, clarifications. They've said what they wanted, what they put up with. All of you have been eminently fair concerning the scheduling, the decision-making, the writing. And I, for one, appreciate it. And I oppose it. And if I had taken the oath of office, I believe in federalism. I believe we should not secede from the Union just because we don't like what the federal government's doing. I think people tried that once before, and it wound up to be a civil war, and might again. That's not the way to do things. So I believe in federalism. If I had taken the oath of office to enforce the federal laws as well as the state laws, I would be opposed to this, and I was opposed to it on other grounds. But I also said the voters will speak their mind, and they have spoken their mind. No one can doubt that. And I don't believe in being a sore loser because I don't think that does anything. The people of California have said they want recreational marijuana and they want medical marijuana, and they're adults and they have the right to vote, and we're going to give them, I guess we're going to give them what they want. And that's the way we ought to operate. in this nation. I understand it's not in vogue to just say, okay, that's what the people voted for, and as long as it's constitutional, we should do it. What's in vogue is to tell people, I don't care what you said, I'll do whatever I want. Well, I don't think we do very well like that. That's my opinion. And I don't think I marched around the world for more than 22 years in the U.S. military so that everybody can do what they want. They ought to listen to the voters. The voters have spoken. I don't agree with what they want, but I have to say they have the right to say so. So I appreciate what you've done. I think you should go out of your way to make sure you have this under control. But as for anything beyond that, I think you should do what the voters want. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mick Caruano.
Hi, my name is Mike Caruana. I've come to several meetings on this subject since around August when I first heard about what you were doing down here. And I just want to let you know, I've been to council meetings from Berkeley down to Watsonville, and I've been watching different governments grapple with this. And I'm extremely impressed by the way the council, the mayor, sir, you have taken everybody's opinion into account. You've been very open and forthcoming, and like the previous gentleman said, you've been very patient in the way that you've put all this together. I'm sure you're all aware I am pro-medical marijuana. I hope that you pass the resolution. One thing I would hope that you would consider is the narrow limitation of where you're going to be putting these facilities. I've seen it in other cities as it plays out, and the landlords who are fortunate enough to be in that situation double and triple their rents, and without any competition, you make it very difficult for someone like me, mom and pop, to try and find a place where this could work for us. That's all I have to say, but I want to thank you. You guys have done a great job. Probably one of the more professional endeavors to take this topic on than I've seen anywhere else in the Bay Area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Taylor Rodriguez.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I just want to say that I'm really appreciative of all the time that's been put into this. I know it's really important for the community, and I think that the ad hoc committee has done a wonderful job on the ordinance as it is currently written, available to the public. Myself as a stakeholder, I was not invited to any of the conversations that happened last week for all of the sweeping changes that are proposed for a new first reading. And in response, I did write a letter, which I did believe was submitted for the record, City Clerk.
Yes, it was.
Yes. So hopefully you all have a copy. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Honorable Mayor Velasquez, honorable council members, your council is evaluating the matter of medical cannabis dispensaries tonight and may even vote on the matter. Over the last 6 months, I've had the privilege of meeting with each of you, city staff and community members, on this matter. It has been a tremendous learning experience. The guidance and wisdom of our elders has been invaluable. I've come to appreciate our shared community even more. I am currently negotiating a lease in general commercial zoning for an excellent, highly securable, and discreet location. As the bird flies, it may be 1,300 feet from a sensitive use, though separated by many roads and other physical barriers. I've actually obtained a signed letter of intent for this space, specifically conforming to the zoning restrictions that were set up for the ordinance as it is currently written. I further request the following if changes are to be made. Maintaining the conditional use permit and regulatory license requirements for medical dispensaries and delivery services. This allows for full public review to occur. This will also make sure that there are no, quote, bad apples. Retaining general commercial as an allowed zoning category for medical dispensaries. Requiring medical dispensaries to have a 1,000-foot setback from sensitive uses. The conditional use permit process will take into account sensitive uses further than 1,000 feet away, and the Planning Commission and City Council will still be able to impose conditions and or reject applications with sensitive uses further than 1,000 feet away based on community impact. Alternatively, add language that expressly allows the discretionary reduction of setbacks to 1,000 feet on a case-by-case basis. Implement an applicant screening process for medical dispensaries, selecting the allowed applicants before evaluating sites. This weeds out the, quote, bad apples and provides young local entrepreneurs an opportunity to compete on a level playing field with big money outside interests that are sure to come in, especially with the passage of Prop 64. I believe I am the right community member, applicant, and entrepreneur for a medical cannabis dispensary in Hollister. I am committed to being a community partner, taking into account the legitimate concerns of all community members, even those opposed to cannabis. This is about medical dispensaries and ensuring our local patients get the service, help, discretion, and clean medicine that they need. Thank you again for all the time that has been spent on this issue. I know it's been very complicated, and I truly do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brent Rodriguez.
Mayor, council members, I do not speak as well as my son.
You taught him?
We started this process about a year ago. Taylor came to me looking for financial backing for a dream of his. And it's taken us this long to find a place that meets the criteria of the ordinance as it's written now. So when I heard tonight that it might change and we're going to be kind of funneled north of Highway 25, I kind of, I have this stake in my back right now. It's like all this time we've spent trying to find the perfect spot, trying to find a landlord that would actually sympathize and back the ordinance as written and rent us a place. Took us a long time. We've looked at a lot of places that were buildable and would fit within our financial budget, and we found it. And so what I'm urging tonight is that you pass the ordinance as written and allow the commercial zoning to stay as it is, instead of funneling us up to the north of 25 area where, as a previous speaker said, the landowners up there will be able to charge whatever they want to charge, and it'll be limited to very few properties that are available without spending a lot of money on a build-out or building our own building. So I urge you to keep it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nolan Golden.
Hello, my name's Nolan. I just want to say that I've been currently just moved to Hollister, and I've been a resident for about 6 or so months now, and it's been a tremendous move for me. I've kind of lived all over the country, and by far Hollister is definitely one of my favorite little towns that I've gotten to live in. I came from a military family, so my dad is an ex-Navy, and I'm technically an ex-Navy brat, so I've gotten, like I said, to kind of explore and get to see all over. And I can definitely tell by the process that's been happening here, a lot of positive conversation has been happening on this issue, and a very hot-button topic as well. So I am in support of this. I am 19, I am a college student, and I am a user of medical cannabis. And I think a lot of the feedback that I've heard on this issue is that it's going to negatively impact our youth. And I think the best way to prevent that from happening is by promoting positive, open conversations like we've all seen here done by our wonderful city council and now my new wonderful city council. So I want to thank you for all the hard work that's been done here, and that is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Peter Hernandez.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you again for having me here. I really appreciate all the hard work that's been put into this. I know it's been long and arduous. There's been a lot of details that have to be worked out, and I just wanted to, one of the biggest things that stood out to me and the reason why I needed to come up here is part of the conversation that I'm hearing is general commercial and North Gateway, but in reality when you look at the totality of the original ordinance, it's not just saying for those of us that don't understand zoning, general commercial, it's downtown, right? And then there's the West Gateway, which is, by, what's that, Hollister Super and the other lumber store besides Ace True Value. And then we also have mixed use, which is all in, there's like 8 to 10 different zoning areas. So if you guys can wrap your mind around this, you have to consider the totality of this. This is an open door. And from what I kept hearing, even from our attorneys here, they were mentioning, well, this is an open, right? This kind of gives you a lot of leeway and a lot of opportunity to really be protected, right? So protected against what's the question? That's what popped into my mind. Are we saying we're trying to protect ourselves from lawsuits? Granted, right? We don't want to get sued. That's not our goal. But what other protections do we need, right? Are we going to open the door just for everybody and anything so that way we're protecting our kids? If that's the same, in that same context, I would tell my kids, do whatever you want, so I'm not worried about you being mad at me. Because I want to protect myself from you being mad at me. But at the same time, am I really protecting them? Are we really protecting our community by opening up the door and just allowing this being so broad that fine, it protects us from a net of lawsuits, but who knows the implications on our local culture, on our kids, on the influences of our kids. The whole point when you're considering this ordinance, you have to consider how it implies to our kids, what we're accepting as a culture within our own community. And that in and of itself holds a lot of weight, right? How much dollars are going to be spent on protecting kids from abuse, right? I'm not talking, so this is crafted as a medical marijuana ordinance. So this is medically focused. That means that really there shouldn't be any focus on or any negative consequences on our kids, which means we should make sure that it's not influencing our kids for them to abuse. So now I'm talking about abuse. Make sure that our kids aren't somehow being encouraged because they see these things all over the place that all of a sudden they consider that, well, San Benito County is very marijuana friendly. But in what context, right? Our kids kind of see the short-term language when they hear us say that this is a marijuana, that there's marijuana facilities all over. In reality, we're not trying to tell them that, but somehow this ordinance definitely opens up that door. So and I just really want you guys to consider taking your time, not adopting the ordinance as is, not just worrying only about lawsuits, but worrying about everything. San Benito County is a growing community. There's a whole lot of opportunity for this community. It could also be very directed in the wrong direction, very dangerous consequences if we're not careful, because we're treading on very very delicate ground. So I would rather you guys put off the first ordinance, make sure the public gets to read and hear the one that changes with all the changes, and give us a chance to dialogue again. As was mentioned earlier, right, this has been really good dialogue. I want to encourage that. And I firmly believe if we want that good dialogue, that we wait, that we don't just adopt it as is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Whitehead.
Good evening, Sue Whitehead. I have attended all the City Council meetings on this subject. I've met with some of you, and I would urge you not to pass it tonight. We need to look at that ordinance. And again, I've discussed with you, and we have discussed between ourselves, 3,000 kids in the high school. They can just send a text and get a medical marijuana card. We need to look at this ordinance, and I urge you not to pass it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Whitehead. Sorry, James Whitehead.
Good evening. Jim Whitehead, Hollister resident. I too, as my lovely wife just shared, the desire that you not vote on this ordinance this evening, but you take the time, as has been shared with us here, so we can all look at the changes that have been proposed. I know there's been a lot of time and effort made in this last week. So again, I really think it would be important for everybody to have the time and the ability to look at those changes and look at the first reading again on December 5th. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Gary Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to just take a moment here
I guess I've always used a yardstick in measuring things as to which way to go. And I think that we can't make a good decision until we know all of the facts. And I don't think the council has been given all the facts tonight. They haven't had an opportunity to look at the changes to the ordinance. And the public hasn't had an opportunity to look at the changes to the ordinance. But there obviously was a lot of concern about the ordinance that we're talking about tonight, or there wouldn't have been proposed changes. So in order to make a good and accurate and wise decision, I'd recommend that you put off and have your first reading after you've had an opportunity to see all of the proposed changes and use that yardstick as a means of making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annette Dixon.
Good evening. I've been to all the meetings, most of the meetings, and I've emailed you before about this. And I appreciate you listening to us and revising the ordinance. And I agree with what's been said by many of my friends here that the public needs to be made aware of the changes before we vote on it. And I don't want to think of this as such a business opportunity. I'm opposed to thinking of just the business aspects. This is a family community, and I just want to go on record saying that we need to protect our families and give the police force a good ordinance that will keep the abusers in check. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Daryl Foote.
Thank you. My name is Daryl Foote. I've lived in the area for about 39 years now. I've attended most of the meetings. I was not part of writing the ordinance or what is that what we call it? The ordinance. I was not a part of that, but it's apparent to me from listening to the conversation tonight that it's really not finished, and I think it would be foolish to vote on something that we understand is not finished until we've all had a chance to look at it, read it. My experience over my life is when I make snap decisions without having all the facts, oftentimes I make mistakes, and I think that opportunity would be for a mistake by jumping too soon. So I would encourage you to wait until we have the ordinance and can look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last speaker for this item, as far as I know, is Mauricio Quintero. Oh, I was wrong. Hi, Sean. Nice try.
This is my first time doing this, so I just want to say that I'm currently a Watsonville resident, but prospective Hollister resident, based on some variables that I am waiting on, application and some other living conditions stuff. But I just neither for or against both sides. I just want the due process, which is like the former person was saying, that you don't sign a document unless you read all the stuff that goes before it, because you don't want to agree to something that you didn't even know you were agreeing to. And in any game, you always want to know the rules before you enter that game. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sean Donahoe.
Hi. Good evening again. Thanks for hosting me in your community again. My name's Sean Donahoe, and I want to thank everybody on council and the mayor, subcommittee, and of course also the community and the people of San Benito County that wholeheartedly agreed that medical cannabis and adult use cannabis should be treated as a public safety and business and professions manner rather than a criminal justice manner, putting us now in broad alignment with a huge percentage of the United States. And now well over half the states have moved forward and evolved on thinking on this matter. I wasn't necessarily going to speak. I had been doing a lot of analysis and letting the community find its own voice. I did notice when I was doing the analysis out of the 17 statewide ballot measures, In terms of San Benito County, this was the third least controversial out of the 17 ballot measures. There's a whole lot of other ballot measures, statewide ballot measures, that frankly, San Benito County was way off the norm, way off the statewide norm. Gun control, way off the norm. The condom bill, way off the norm. But pretty much Prop 64, we did use this as a bellwether, and that was spoken earlier by the community, and here we are. I was going to speak a little bit more about, I think reference has been made to using factual information to derive decisions. I would point out some of the comments made earlier. I've been in the medical cannabis industry for quite some time and been around the state. I don't think these are factual statements that a child in high school can get a medical cannabis recommendation through a text message. That would be, frankly, a violation of Prop 215. That would be prosecutable immediately. I've never heard of anything like that ever occurring. The other thing I would mention is there's no such thing, respectfully, Mr. Burns, as a honey oil lab. That's a pejorative term used by narcotics officers. Frankly, Assembly Bill 2679 was passed by our state assembly and our state senate, signed by the governor at the conclusion of our legislative session. It was sponsored by the California Police Chiefs Association as well as the League of California Cities that absolutely set up a framework for a very regulated, modern extraction and infusion industry to comply with the Type 6 and Type 7 statewide licenses. So however we vote after the facts are exposed, however you all vote, I'm happy that the conversation continues forward and always available here as a resource. Thanks.
And actually, I do have one more speaker. I think this is the last speaker, but you'll probably prove me wrong. This calling Somari Razani, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Good evening, community members. I'm new to your community. I hail from Colorado, from Denver. I've been in the marijuana industry in Denver since 2011, officially on record with the state and the Department of Revenue there. And it seems like there's some inherent differences with the way the approach is being formed and formulated here in California. However, I do want to assure you that in any case, any of these businesses that are approved must go through some pretty heavy vetting. And I know I see some fire department officials here, particularly with manufacturing. You know, those things are controlled, and there already are codes set up in National Fire Protection Association codes for any kind of solvent extraction of any botanical material, whether it be for perfume or whether it be for just about anything. So I don't want to scare you guys any more than it seems that you already are with involving this industry within your community. I do understand that there's a lot of questions, and frankly, it's a pretty daunting task for you all, and I know for the people who are writing the ordinances. But I think together as a community, what you have to realize is abuse is a very subjective term, and I think that the majority of our kids these days are abusing and are addicted to prescription drugs that are given to them by doctors. So who's to say they're not going to abuse cannabis? Well, we can't say that, but I think unfortunately and ironically, something so natural is put on the pedestal and something that's given to you by doctors. And so what I have to say is if the consensus is, which it seems, that you need to further involve yourself and go over the ordinance, then you should. But otherwise, reforming the executed ordinance after makes sense as well, because there's a lot of new questions that are going to come about in the next coming months as these amendments that have already been passed and initiatives that have been passed come to light, and you see how they're going to involve themselves within your community. So executing and reforming is always an option as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There are no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We will bring this back to the council. Council have any comments? Councilmember Luna?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to thank all the speakers that came forward tonight in regards to the current ordinance and actually the proposed changes. Personally, I don't feel that I can move on this, and I'll tell you why. When we as elected officials are given the ordinance to read that will come before the city council and vote, because there will be some changes, whatever, the ordinance will mean for this community, we study it. We study it, and we make sure that we're making the right decision. When I personally, as a council member of the District 2, have not seen the ordinance, have not read what the changes are, I am not prepared to vote on anything tonight. I would like for this to be actually moved to December the 5th to give us the opportunity to really look at this, because after all, I mean, if we are to vote on this, we may even make some recommendations to the ad hoc committee. So I'd like to just say that, and I do want to thank the public that comes forward. We hear the pros, we hear the cons. We've had the opportunity to read ordinance from throughout other cities and communities. We've had the opportunity to visit different sites, and I've been there, and I've gone to workshops on it. But when I am being informed that there's some changes, and I don't have that document, I think you should, you can think, really think, and put yourself in my position, in our position, and think, how can you possibly vote on something that you haven't looked at or questioned? So my comment tonight, Mr. Mayor, is that am not prepared to vote on anything tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Clower?
So I'm kind of on the same page as Councilmember Luna. About 2 months ago, when we talked about this the last time, I had said that I couldn't vote for this because of the comments from the people in my district. And my hope was that tonight we'd have something new. I understand the timing didn't quite work out, so I'm actually excited that there's going to be some significant changes so that I can actually come back to the table and start talking about this again, because I'm kind of torn, because the feedback that I got was that most people didn't like the ordinance, the original ordinance that the ad hoc committee wrote. But then when we look at the vote that was taken on Prop 64 in the county, there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily talking to me about medical marijuana or marijuana in general. So I'm going to encourage anybody who lives in District 3 that wants to talk about this ordinance to give me a ring. My phone number is 831-801-0858, because I want to talk to you, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't talking, and you got to kind of join the conversation. What I will say moving forward is that I'd recommend to the ad hoc committee to really, really look at the 600 feet from churches and residences. The reason why we have the zoning we do in those areas is because those are the job creation zoning. That is where people are supposed to work. That's where these type of industries are supposed to happen. So you have people that live near there or in that zoning who understand that they're in an industrial zone, or they're in a North Gateway, which is kind of a transitional zone. You can't build a house in either of these. So moving forward, we need to foster growth in industry in these industries. Otherwise, in this zoning, otherwise we're really limiting ourselves. And if you look at a road like Santa Rosa, which is a county road which has housing on it, there's a lot of industrial parcels that are right next to that are going to be taken out of this. So you're really zeroing in on a smaller area than the original ordinances, which is totally fine because most people didn't like the original ordinance. But then you're chopping that one up with a bunch of little circles. And not to offend anybody who runs a church or goes to church or anything, but if you have a church in a industrial zoning is supposed to be where you have all this action going on during the week, where people are working. Unfortunately, it happens downtown. It happens in the industrial zones. If you have a church, that property is not being used to its full capacity. So I understand if that's what the landlord wants to rent to, that's fine. But I don't think that we should limit economic activity in those types of zoning when that's what it's there for. So I would recommend that the ad hoc committee take a look at that, and I look forward to seeing the new ordinance.
Thank you. Councilmember Friend?
Well, I'm confused by what Carson was just saying. Then what's wrong with what you already have in front of you? You just stated that you wanted it to be open to that zoning. And that's what you have that was brought out last Wednesday, that was in our package.
The original ordinance?
Well, it's the original ordinance with some changes. It has some minor changes in it.
But like I said, the feedback that I've gotten from my constituents is that they don't like what you and I wrote. So that's why I'm happy to see it changing, so I can go back and talk to them. But based on the changes that you've stated, I think that's very restrictive. And I mean, I haven't gotten a map out because we've only been here for an hour and circled what's going to be out, what's going to be in. But you're taking off some pretty big chunks of that zoning, which is there for industrial reasons.
Thank you. Your comments, Mr.
No.
Frank? Okay. Just want to go back. You know, we've been discussing this item quite a while. I think it was summertime when this thing blew up, and a lot of people did not like each other for a while. But you know, we went back, we sat down with everybody, the both pro and the con group, and really sat down and listened, and took a lot of time. I mean, a lot of time. I think my wife has gotten mad at me as much time as I'm spending on this topic. But it was important to hear it, to try to get it right. And I think from the very beginning I've said to everyone, this won't be perfect, but I don't want to start out halfway. I don't want to start out by putting Band-Aids on things right after we pass it. I fully understand there will be some changes. But when you get a group that was completely against it supporting the changes, and you get a group that was completely for it and giving us information to help us make it better, we have a pretty good ordinance coming forward. We need to take the time. A couple weeks is not going to change our lives. I don't want to be making decisions based on property values or rents. We need to make decisions based on what's best for the entire community, so we don't start off with mistakes that we have to find a way to fix later. As we all know, those are a little more difficult to do down the road. I believe what we've done is a good document. I look forward to sharing that with the other council members and taking in some of the points that were made here tonight. But I don't want to make the mistake of rushing something through. We can take the time. We can present this at the next meeting, December 5th, for the first reading. Let everyone have their chance to read through it. We can make a better decision here the first time, rather than, again, coming back and we'll change this, we'll change that, depending on who owns what property. So I appreciate all of your input from the council. I'm hoping we could go ahead and continue. Would this be continuing to the, what would this be? How would you?
Taking no action, you're bringing in no ordinance.
Okay, so do we have to have a vote on that? Is that the consensus from the council?
Mr. Sims is going to be here. I'm not going to be here, so I'm okay with it. So.
Okay. So we have a consensus from the council to move forward with the first reading at the next meeting. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sitting here through this with all of us. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute or 10-minute break.
Unless you'll have something by Wednesday. I don't believe in the limiting language. I think what we had was what okay. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Where are we at now?
We are back to item E41. Everyone?
Okay.
Yes, this item is a public hearing to consider approval of a resolution to join the statewide community infrastructure program and become a participating agency member in the program. The League of California Cities and California State Association of Counties sponsored the development of the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. And in 2002, this authority established the statewide community infrastructure program, and it's an acronym, it's called SKIP. Initially, the program was developed to allow owners of property in participating cities and counties to finance the development of impact fees that would be payable by property owners upon receiving development entitlements or building permits. They would be then the program was later expanded to include financing of public capital improvements directly related to projects that were conditions of approval for a development. If a property owner chooses to participate in the program, the selected public capital improvements and development impact fees owed to the city will be financed by the issuance of tax-exempt bonds by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. The authority would establish assessment district within the city of Hollister, and they would be responsible for administering the program. And the fees would be paid off over time through property tax assessments. The staff report provided to you provides a more detailed explanation of the program. I'm prepared to answer questions if you have any. We're recommending that you open the public hearing in order to invite any interested members of the public to provide testimony regarding the SKIP and the proposed action. After closing the hearing, we're recommending that the council consider the report and public testimony and adopt Resolution 2016-197. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Councilmember Clark?
Not necessarily a question. In reading through this, I read it once and I felt kind of weird about it. I didn't know what it was that was bothering me. Took a few days, came back, because it was nice we had an extra couple days this week. so I reread it, and then I realized what was bothering me. And on page 2 of the staff report, where it says benefits to the property owner, there's a couple bullet points that I think are kind of suspect, and they're going to kind of lead me to my recommendation. Essentially what's happening, if I understand it correctly, is that a developer is taking the public improvements they're going to have to make and possibly the impact fees, and then bonding for them, and then saying that in the future, through property tax payments, whoever owns the property at that point will pay it off. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think for the impact fees, yes. For the public improvements, that's true. I think that's a tool that wouldn't be used as commonly.
Okay.
It might be as a way, though, they had some examples. One of them was for the construction of a reservoir, and there was a couple different development projects that pooled together, and that was to help, I think, get the financing tools to have that built and paid off through user fees.
Okay.
I think one example that for locally for the impact fees would be recently the city council was asked to consider incentives for a business expansion and retention. And one of the proposals that business owner suggested that the city recommended not pursuing was to defer their payment of the impact fees. We proposed to do other things. This is a opportunity that would allow this business or some other industrial development to, if they participated in the program, to have their impact fees covered while they pay them off over time. That burden would run with the land.
Okay, so, and I think it makes a ton of sense for industrial and commercial, maybe even large multifamily projects. But my problem is, it's bullet point number 4, and I'll read it. It says, for home buyers, paying for costs of public infrastructure through a special assessment is superior to having those costs rolled into the cost of the home. Although the tax bill is higher, the amount of the mortgage is smaller, making it easier to qualify. Moreover, because the special assessment financing is at tax-exempt rates, it typically comes at lower cost than mortgage rates. But on the residential side, as being somebody in real estate and anybody who understands how supply and demand works and a market works, they're not going to unroll the costs of the improvements that they bonded. They're going to still sell the house at the absolute highest price point that they can. So in essence, if we allow this for residential projects and a developer comes in and says, yeah, I'd like to take advantage of this, I want to put this bond out, and over the next 30 years the property owners are going to pay the property taxes, it'll pay back the bond, then they're buying a house at the same cost as everybody else in the neighborhood next door, but they have a bigger chunk on their property tax. And to me, I see that as a problem. And I don't know how, I saw the map that the city manager showed me of all the cities that have it. I don't know who's doing it for residential. I don't know how many developers are actually utilizing this, but I'm afraid that what's going to happen is if we allow it for residential, then a developer will come in, pass the cost of the improvements and the impact fees onto a homeowner that doesn't know that that's actually what's happening. Because we have certain neighborhoods now that have Mello-Roos districts that are a couple extra $100, $600 more a year than a neighborhood next door, but you don't find out until you're already in contract. And by that point, you're usually saying, oh, well, that stinks. I guess I'll just go ahead and buy the house anyways. So I don't want to burden the people who buy new houses with something that the developers probably should have paid for originally.
Well, we could check with the California Statewide Communities Development Authority to see if the resolution could be adjusted to apply just to commercial industrial, and then continue the public hearing if that's the pleasure of the council, and amend the ordinance accordingly.
Well, my hope
the city would have to. We do shepherd the applications to the interested property owners.
Mm-hmm.
Is one of the things the city would do. Our administrative costs are pretty minimal, but we also would the city would co-sign on an application. So there would be that. We would be vetting proposals.
Okay. I mean, that's good. I just think, and I'm just speaking for myself, haven't heard from anybody else, but I think we're better off cutting that off from the get-go, as opposed to trying to tell people, hey, no, we don't actually like what you're going to do. Then, because that leaves an opportunity for people to be subjective, and that's not helpful. That's it.
Councilmember Friend.
I had, in fact, the opposite question about that is, if a developer uses this and tells somebody, well, that brings the cost of your house down. It doesn't bring his profit margin down, but it brings the cost of that house down to somebody who maybe can't afford the true value of that. Now it's going to be on their taxes, and they don't know about it. 2 years from then, they lose the house because they can't make those payments. What did we do? We created a monster that kicked them out of their house because we thought we were being cute with the tax money. I don't think this is a good idea. And it's another state bureaucracy that's going to tell our communities what to look like. And this is not a good idea.
Have any questions, Councilmember Luna? No, I would agree with Councilmember Clower and Councilmember Friend. I think this is just going to open up things we don't need to be dealing with.
Can I clarify? Is that for the residential or for the industrial and commercial?
For me, it's the same.
It's it's a funding tool to help economic development. It's similar to an assessment. Actually, they say they either use an assessment district or community financing district. So in the cases of the industrial commercial development, they're going to be paying these impact fees. It's just a question of when. They either pay it when they get their final occupancy for their building permit, or they will be able to pay it over time and prorate it, so they won't have to front load and finance maybe some of that cost of paying for the impact fees, and then the interest rates are favorable. This is something that was put together by the League of California Cities and the California Association of Counties, and it's administered by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. It's not a state program per se.
For me, it's specifically residential 1 to 4.
If this was just commercial property we're talking about, I would agree.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we could-
yeah, just to sort of confirm what Mary was saying, we did check today just to make sure, and you can set a policy because you are sort of in the driver's seat at the beginning, and I would suggest that you do set this as part of maybe a motion or a policy to just help fund commercial and industrial development. Now, the one that might be a little bit on the tricky side is, as you know, is sort of the multifamily, because technically most financing institutions consider multifamily a commercial operation, and you may want to be specific whether or not you don't have any residential component of this or not. But certainly, again, as Mary said, it is a financing or an economic tool for developers in industrial or commercial areas to maybe finance some of the off-site infrastructure improvements and or the impact fees. So, but again, we're just offering tools for economic development, and it's completely up to you folks, obviously. So.
Okay, this time I will open it for public hearing.
Marty Richmond.
Marty Richmond from House. In general, I agree that this is not appropriate for residential. I think it's more appropriate for commercial, which probably have better lawyers. I hate to say that, but it's true, and they have more access to that. But I would like to get a clarification on whether or not, first, two things. Number one is, can we pick and choose, no matter, let's say we do it for commercial, for instance, and can we pick and choose which part of the impact fees we collect per normal so that it can be spent right away because they're needed, and which part can be deferred? That's question number one. Question number two is, will that be the whole thing? Will every project, for lack of a better word, be at the discretion of City Council, or will they automatically fall under this if we go into it? I hope you understand my questions for the staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any
No other speakers.
Okay, this time I'll close public hearing.
I can address Marty's questions relatively simple. It is up to the developer as the applicant to apply. It's not necessarily at the discretion of the city. It's not if one person does it, they all do it. The second part was the city of Hollister receives actually its impact fees up front. So I mean, we're not deferring. So we get our money, and they're the ones that are paying it back over time. Does that make sense? Okay. So the idea is that the state issues this huge bond. You as an applicant get proceeds of that bond to pay the city of Hollister for their impact fees. Okay. Then you pay that bond back over time. Got it? Okay.
Just the property tax collects that.
That's what secures the loan.
Thank you very much.
I would like to see it come back, Mary, with a clearer explanation as to our ability to limit this to commercial development.
Ed,
If
can I
that's
just
possible.
clarify, is it the pleasure of the council to have this apply to multifamily housing, larger multifamily and mixed use?
We're talking about affordable multifamily housing, or we just talking about multifamily?
Just multifamily or mixed use. I understand.
I don't want to see it used that way. I can almost agree with the industrial and commercial. The other parts, no, not for me.
So, for the multifamily, on 5 and over units, you have a different type of buyer, you have a different type of owner. So, they're investors, they're people who can kind of protect themselves from the downfall of this. And they also have a difficult time financing the projects in general. So I'm open to it, anything over 5 units, because you can get a normal loan on a 1 to 4 unit complex. I'm not quite sure on the mixed use, because if we were to do mixed use, you could do like a condo above and an office space or retail below, and then you'd still have separate owners above. And that would be somebody who's probably buying the least expensive unit in the entire city, and then having this that could be on their tax roll.
And I want to. What I will do is, I'm not exactly sure, but and I apologize for not knowing this. I think the minimum amount to actually apply for is like $500,000. So we're not talking
It
general.
is $500,000.
Okay, so we're not talking about a small. Duplex or fourplex. These are going to be projects that are substantial in size. So.
But if somebody might put in 10 fourplexes,
yeah,
and then
Councilmember Luna.
Yeah, I just have a question, Mary. If we put this off, do we have a time frame as to when we would have to act on this or give you a response?
No, it's an open program.
Open?
Yeah.
Okay.
They do issue bonds, I think, once a year, though, unless it's a very significant project over a certain amount. I think it's more than $5 million in improvements. Then the authority may look into trying to do a bond for something like that.
I don't think we should be looking for ways to help developers make money. I think it's just a bad path to be down. If we're doing this to help create jobs in an industrial complex or commercial complex, again, I'm almost there. But when we start talking about residential to help developers put together a deal that they can't afford to do otherwise, we are going down the wrong path. Do you have another comment, Councilmember Clower?
Without getting into a full-on discussion or conversation about it, okay. This would be a tool for people who want to build market-rate multifamily, and that's something that we've been working toward for over a year. So I just don't want that to get lost. We're not here to help developers make money, but we're here to help alleviate the housing situation that we have. And if it's a couple extra, if it's an 8-plex or a 12-plex, that's a big deal. We don't get very many multifamily projects. So I just don't want that to get lost in the conversation.
All right. Any other questions, Council?
Can I get some consensus on that? Or just some clearer direction on the residential component? So when we bring it back, because we'd like to continue it to a date certain.
I'm completely against any residential being involved in this.
I would agree. It has to be commercial.
I would like to see it come back
with
some more detail on it.
Okay.
Where's Victor?
He's out the back door.
I'd like to see it come back to include all of Gilroy.
So, can we continue that then to December 5th?
If you continue
public
it,
hearing?
if you continue it to December 5th, the deadline for the December 5th agenda is the day after tomorrow, Mary.
Maybe we better try that.
Well, I mean, it's fine with me. I just don't know how.
21st.
Let's yeah.
21st?
I'm sorry, is it the 21st or the 19th?
I think it's the 19th.
19th.
It could come, yeah,
19th.
it could come back on the 19th.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move on to F51.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quickly, this resolution, as you know, and Councilman Friend, as members of the Fire Protection Committee that meets on a monthly basis, the City of San Juan Bautista and the County of San Benito recently adopted resolutions wanting to explore the formation of a county-wide fire district or a joint powers authority, and they have requested that the City of Hollister also participate in that study. The financial portion of it would be, they were asking 40% from us, it'd be 40% from the county, 20% from San Juan Bautista. And they would be going out and being the lead agency, probably issuing an RFP, hiring a professional consultant to prepare the feasibility analysis for the formation of one of those types of district, whether it be a JPA, which is a joint powers authority, and or a countywide fire district. So. That's what you have on the table right now, and if the mayor or councilman friend want to expand on that, they feel free.
I think
I don't know if you want to hear my expansion.
Well, let me kind of go back a little further back. When we created this partnership, one of the intentions at the time was how do we keep working together so that we can have a better department throughout the community, throughout the county. And part of that discussion early on was maybe someday we can get to the point of a JPA or a district to make sure we can keep the firefighters. Right now, the county and San Juan Bautista together is $1.5 million. They're contributing to it. And if they were to pull out of that, we're going to have an issue again with more layoffs. This was a way to make something a little more permanent as a partnership so that we're all committed to working together. And with the new CFDs to help pay for some of the new homes going on, we can kind of collect that throughout the entire county. That was the purpose of these discussions. We're at that point now. We saw what happened recently with when we lost the grant. We need to be careful not to be going through this every few years when there's a downturn in the local economy or within the city's budget.
I do have some comments.
Councilmember Friend?
Well, I have two comments. One, the city of Hollister has a fire department, a great fire department. There is no benefit for the taxpayers in the city of Hollister to go into this. I'm not opposed to talking to anybody about what this could provide us, but I don't see we write a blank check for 40% of what costs are we talking about. Nobody has been able to tell me what the cost is going to be of the study. And I don't think it's right for us to spend our taxpayers' money on something that's going to benefit 20% of the population in the county. Because if it goes in, it's going to cost more money, which means the people in Hollister are going to pay more for this fire protection agency, and they already have a great fire department. There's no benefit to us. They need to go do this study and prove to us that there's a benefit, or there's no reason for us to even be talking to them. I understand that they wanted, if I was in the county, I'd be concerned because they could possibly lose what they have now. They're not just by coming to us and saying, well, we want you to pay 40% of this cost. For what? I don't see. What is 40% of that cost, and what are we going to gain out of it? I don't think we're going to gain anything.
Well, again, I'm going to point out the original intent was to build a partnership within the entire community so we can have better response times, better service throughout the city and county, with the county and San Juan paying into it. If, again, the county or San Juan decide to leave together, that's $1.5 million we will not have, which means we will be talking about laying off 15 firefighters. And believe me, this fire department is so much better together as a team than it was when we first started these conversations back in 2013.
No doubt about it.
We were having some serious issues out there. We did not have the staff we needed to make sure our firefighters were protected. We're small communities. If we don't partner up on some of these things, we're going to have issues. Now, it's not perfect, but this is what we need to work on to make the system better. This is a cost that would help us find that out. It's not a commitment to anything more than finding out if it's possible to make it work.
So we're asking the city taxpayers, because of lack of management in the county and blowing the budget, and they can't afford to have firemen, okay, city residents, you have a fire department, now pay twice for it. I don't see that. What are we doing? We're not going to lose any firemen if we lose that 1.5. That's exactly why we had the chief do the study he did, so that we only hired 6. We didn't hire 20.
No, we will. If we lose $1.5 million,
I just don't see any benefit.
We're going to be in trouble.
If they do the study and it shows that the city of Hollister will be better off doing it, then I'm for it.
That's why we need to do the study.
But we
Councilmember
don't need
Luna?
to pay for it. Let San Juan pay 40% of it.
Councilmember Luna?
Well, I've always said that we have a great fire department, and I think I mentioned that before also. And you know what? It's almost like this is a binding blind statement here, resolution. 40% of what? To be determined? How do we know what that 40% is? I mean, does anybody know this? Because, I mean, this is something that I really think maybe you shouldn't have even been on the agenda tonight.
More
Because,
of the cost.
I mean, there's got to be some more study done on it, of course, but when it comes down to our city fire department, I think they're excellent. I think they're doing a great job for our community. And I really would not take any action in regards to a 40% of what. I don't think we're prepared to do that. And I agree with Councilmember Friend.
Okay. Councilmember Gomez?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short. I look forward to the cities of San Juan Bautista and San Benito County paying for this complete study on their own, and I look forward to those results.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Councilmember Clever?
First, I'd like to thank the citizens of Hollister for supporting Measure W, which when that campaign was going, one of the main things was public safety. So by paying Measure W, you, along with your normal sales tax, you are supporting the fire department. Unless there's some other roundabout way to pay for a fire district, it seems like the people, at least in District 3 and the citizens of Hollister, would be paying for it. Especially if they live in a new house, you're paying on your property taxes for your CFD, you're paying on the sales tax, you're paying on the additional sales tax, and then you'd probably be paying on a parcel tax for the same, realistically, a very close service to what you're getting right now. There's always room for improvement, and I think the fire department would be the first to say that. But it's not going to be leaps and bounds above what we're getting right now. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I agree with everybody else that if they want to find out what their options are, then they should pay for it. I just don't see how it makes any sense for us to pay for a study on something that we know is already working.
Okay. Is there any speaker cards?
Curiously, no.
Wow. All right.
Curiously, no.
Is there a motion? No motion? All right. The item dies for lack of a motion. We will move on to item F52.
This will be mine, and this is just simply bringing money from the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund from last year to this year. And as you know, this fund is used to purchase equipment, and with this fund, we have not used general fund money for police cars since 2009. So we're going to kind of continue that and use this funding This year, we think we're going to have to purchase a gang car, which I think the current one is a 2001, and a car for the unit for the officer assigned to that. I'll take any questions.
So, do I understand what it says? This is already money that we have. You're just asking for permission to spend the money we already have.
Correct.
So that's the only reason it's before the council.
That's it.
Okay, any other questions? Is there any comment cards?
No, sir.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Moved.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Against? Motion carries. Item F53.
I just want to say that I think that's the first resolution we've done since consent, right? Way to go, Dave.
It's the beard. That did it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to, if I can, the next two items are sort of related about the resolution, I think 193 and resolution 194, 2016-193 to 2016-194. It relates to a portion of property that the city currently owns on McCrae Street. In the past, as you know, or some of you have been intimately involved with, is the vacation of a portion of those streets, and as it related to the development of Walgreens, and then the second one was the development of the Les Schwab that has been recently opened. What we're looking at doing right now is vacationing a little bit more of that street, or vacating more of that street all the way to Park Street. It's roughly 80,000 square feet. We have an appraisal of about $4.75. This would allow the city to vacate the property, and then also the second item would be to authorize the city to release an RFP and accept proposals for the purchase of that property at some point in the future. Once we also need to get the Planning Commission's blessing on it tomorrow night. It's scheduled to have the zoning or general plan conformance of general commercial or C2S. So that's supposed to take place tomorrow, and so this action is kind of contingent upon that action at the Planning Commission tomorrow night. So with that said, staff recommends adopting Resolution 2016-193, vacating a portion of McCrae Street, and then also adopting 2016-194, which authorizes the eventual release of the RFP to potential developers or buyers. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. There is the legal description has not yet been completely written, but there is a map or an exhibit as part of your package that shows the approximate location of the area to be vacated.
Okay. Any questions from council? Councilmember Clyra?
City Manager, can you please explain in common English what we're trying to do?
What you're trying to do?
What the city's trying to do?
What you're essentially trying to do is you're trying to essentially relocate the existing McCrae Street to another location, which will free up property to be developed for a higher and better use. As you know, you have a parking lot at the school, then you have about 100 feet of weeds, and then you have McCrae Street. And the idea is that the street would eventually move to the west and be incorporated as kind of the Complete Streets project, along with the property adjacent to the Rancho San Justo School, and then that property would be available for development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did we have any public
Nothing
comment?
till the motorcycle rally.
Okay, nothing to the more. All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve 2016-194 and 190. Or 195
93 and
196.
94.
193, 194.
Yes.
Second.
Motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. 5-0 vote. We will move to item 56, F56.
Is that the motorcycle rally? I got lost on my agenda. Mayor and Council, the city has not been in receipt of an executed version of the rally that the promoter had been given. So staff is recommending that we continue the item till December 5th. And with that, I would also recommend that the City Council, we're meeting on the 28th for a study session related to sewer rates, which I hope is going to be exciting for everybody. But I do believe that it's probably important to go ahead and put this contract on for discussion as well on that Monday night, so I can get a clear direction from the council on some of the terms that the promoter has initiated or thrown that out back at me to sort of review and analyze. I haven't given the agreement to the city attorney yet, the most recent version, or their comments back. But I think it's important for me to be able to get my thoughts and your thoughts together so that we can have a reasonable discussion with Rochos Incorporated, and we can move forward and try to get that thing done so that it goes on the agenda for the 5th. My understanding is that Randy from Roadshows will be in town, I believe, on December 2nd or 3rd. So hopefully if we can have that conversation next Monday, it'll give me 4 or 5 days to have the conversations with him, and hopefully maybe we can get assigned a contract from him by the night of the 5th. So.
Okay. Is there any questions from council? Councilmember Luna?
Yeah, so any documents that you gave us so far, such as the profit and loss.
Yeah,
Is there anything else coming besides this one-page document?
I actually hadn't. I forwarded that to you, the council, as soon as I received it. I actually haven't gone through it, and I haven't spoken to Randy today about what was sent. He sent that over the weekend, but we probably will be speaking tomorrow, and I can ask if there's anything else forthcoming as far as the financials that you were requesting pursuant to Section 11 of the agreement.
Exactly, because that certainly is not an audit statement. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, you said we did have a speaker card on this one. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Tim Burns.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It sounds like, from what the city manager just suggested, that you're prepared to move forward. I would certainly hope that's not necessarily the case. I would like to just lay out a couple of things as I understand them to see if it's correct. My understanding is not this last year, but the year prior, city lost about $90,000 that's currently being negotiated through a non-binding arbitration. It's my understanding that you don't know what last year's rally actually cost, or if it was a money maker or a loss to the city and the community. Understand, having heard the mayor speak about permit fees and the inadequateness of those, and that doesn't sound like that's certainly been resolved. And one of the things that came up that was really concerning to me, and I would imagine members of the community, is something that Councilmember Clower brought up the last time that this was discussed, and that had to do with the retirement of an officer or public safety person as a result of an incident that would happen at the rally, and how the city may have to burden the cost of that, if I understood that conversation correctly. To me, that's a huge red flag. And I would also suggest, I've heard somebody talk about the fact that there's no clearly dedicated budget on this matter. And again, I struggle with trying to figure out what it is the city's trying to do. Clearly, it's not the Gilroy Garlic Festival, but I've not heard of any real significant donations made from hosts of the event to nonprofits or charities. And clearly, it's not a family-oriented event, and it should not be considered a signature event, nor is it who Hollister is. So if you're going to underwrite an event, why not underwrite the Olive Festival, or maybe the Farmers Market, or even maybe the air show as a significant other event, rather than an event that clearly doesn't define the community, seems to put the community at significant risk, and certainly has no good use, as far as I can tell, based on what I've heard or seen over the years. It's an event that has stopped and started on many times, and frankly, it troubles me that even that you think to move forward with it. Albert Einstein was quoted as saying that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is a definition of insanity. And to move forward with the information you now have, in my mind, would be crazy. And so I would ask that you seriously consider moving forward with this and think it through. I know you're diligent, and I'd ask that you exercise that diligence in this case as well. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond.
Well, we're still here. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I'll try again to explain my demand for a budget. I am not trying to limit how much money you spend. I'm trying to put a stake in the ground to find out how we're spending it. I simply can't understand, after all these years that I've been a supporter of the rally, I don't understand why we can't do this. What is so hard about that? We should start with a meeting and say, we think we spend 100 hours administration getting ready. There's the stake in the ground. And when it's over, we want to know how many we really spent. Keep track of it. And then at the end, you say, oh, we only spent 90. Or no, we spent 120. The fact that the numbers come out at the end doesn't make any difference. You need to know where it goes. If you don't know where it goes, you can't manage it. And as changes come up, required by the law, required by just the circumstances of the rally, you won't know what effect it really has on your budget if we don't do that. And so we've been going for years. I've been asking for a rally budget. I don't care about the city budget that runs over 2 fiscal years, and we keep saying, well, it's so hard to keep track because it's 2 fiscal years and so on and so forth. I don't care about that. I care about is a budget is make-believe. You are the entrepreneur, and this is an entertainment operation you are operating. You would want to know how much you spent on paper cups, how much you spent on security, what the risks are, and you would want to know how much you spent on planning, and you would know what we had to do not to spend so much. I'm not a person who's going to stand here and say, I demand this makes money. That would be foolish because there are other benefits we get from the rally that we can't measure, like how many people come back to Hollister. We had to try to figure it out. How much free advertising we get from all this advertising done by the promoter. We ought to try to figure out what that's worth. I mean, that's what we would do. It's not all about dollars and cents. But if you don't have the basic budget broken up, you will never know what's going on. And I'm at the point where my personal thing is I can't support it anymore until we get there. Let's start with an estimate. At least the first budget or the first year or two has to be an estimate in detail at some reasonable detail level. It doesn't have to be down to how many pair of athletic socks everybody brings for washing, but it has to be how much we spend for this kind of security and that kind of electricity and this kind of utility and so on and so forth. You would not run your household like that. You would not run any basic business you have like that. This is a business. What are we trying to hide here? It might be cheaper for us to just wrap it up in $100 bills, walk downtown, and hand it out to people who keep voting for it. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No more speakers.
Okay.
Can I respond a little bit to that?
Sure. You can in a second.
All right.
Are there any comments from council? Okay. You can respond.
No, I struggle with the concept that we don't have a budget. We've operated the rally for the last 4 years. It cost us $180,000. I don't know what anybody else wants us to say other than that's about what it costs. It does change a little bit from year to year, not too much. $180,000 is what we expect to get from a promoter to break even or cover our cost. It's really as simple as that. I understand Marty's frustrated, but really that's what it is. It's simple. And we've been operating on that. I've given you guys, the council, the spreadsheet that represents that, and we don't expect there to be any other changes. So we're getting used to running it. We're actually becoming more efficient now. The more years we do this, the better we are getting at it. So it actually helps.
I understand what Mr. Richards is saying, and let me meet with you and raise on the committee so we can go through that. I understand his question there. Any other questions? Councilmember Luna?
Yeah, I just want to say 180,000, I think it's more than that, personally. And it's only because of experience and working, the rally in years past when I was an employee of the city of Hollister. And I did do a spreadsheet at the beginning, and I believe I did give it to somebody at the city. And I think I can bring that back up because actually it was a line item cost. And I think that's what possibly Marty's looking for. It's a line item cost by department, and actually all the expenditures, time, hours, and that's something that maybe this is what the public needs to see, because then you will have the idea actually what the cost is, what kind of cost is involved, and it was more than 200,000, but there it was done.
Okay. We do have line item costs. We do have hourly staff costs. The area that we've always, and it's a small piece of it, is exempt employees. We don't keep track of them because a lot of times it'll be a 15-minute or less phone call. It's only attorneys that bill like in 6-minute increments, so that we don't do that. And round up. So that's the biggest area. I mean, and that's a small piece of it. I mean, the fluctuation is usually the officers that we get from the other cities. That's our major cost.
And I'll let Dave speak in a minute. And also, every bill that we pay goes through our warrant register process. Every 2 weeks, you can see what accounts that we pay and out of which accounts. I mean, who we pay and out of what accounts we pay them from. And it is relatively simple. We agree, and that's why we keep coming up with the same number. It's not a false number. Like, and Brett's correct. I probably have 5 hours in next year's rally, just by conversations and putting together the contract and writing the temporary or the transmittal a couple times.
Just to clarify one thing on that, the cost though. So the cost for security and other items kind of related to that does fluctuate several $1,000s every year, just based on the date of the rally. It's simply kind of the nature of the beast. We can get cheaper officers if it's sort of during the week and off the 4th of July weekend. Actually, a lot cheaper. But if it's closer to the 4th of July, it's a little more expensive for us. We have to actually pay premium at some places, and we shop this around statewide as well. Another thing is the first rally we put together the budget. It was about $140,000, and with that, it was a good rally. Everybody liked it, but for internally, there was a lot of inadequacies that we had to kind of sort of figure out. It was kind of a process motion. Now he's right. We're about 180,000 is about right. We're going to have to do some inflation adjustments here the next few years, but it'll be still around $200,000, I would guess.
Okay.
We can talk about it more next month.
All right. Thank you. Now, you wanted to continue to
December 5th, but I also want to have it on the agenda for next Monday.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that, City Attorney? No. Okay. So there's a consensus to continue it. Okay. Thank you. Move to item 57.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to excuse myself from this.
Okay. You can recuse yourself.
This is a resolution approving an agreement between the city and the San Benito County Arts Council to paint a mural as part of the Veterans Voices of San Benito County Collaborative Muralism and Digital Storytelling Project on the eastway wall of the Veterans Memorial Building. The grant is being funded with a combination of $500 from the Veterans of Foreign War. The American Legion is contributing $500, and then there's also the Arts Council received a Veterans Initiative and Arts grant. Veteran Philip Arbuena was selected as the muralist, and the executive director of the Arts Council, Jennifer Lane, is here. I thought she could provide you some background on the process that they went through to come to this rendering.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So this here. Well, first let me back up a little bit. So we applied for a grant in early 2016 for a new project with the California Arts Council called Veterans Initiative in the Arts, and the aim of the grant is to engage veterans and their families in art programs and services and bigger projects. So this is part of a two-part process. We worked with the American Legion and the VFW to create this mural design here that was done by lead artist Philip Ray Orabuena, who's a veteran himself. He served 3 tours in Iraq. And then there's also a second part of the process that we're doing in collaboration with CMAP for a whole series of short films on veterans' experiences, and both the final mural and the 5 to 6 short films will be celebrated in spring 2017, where we'll invite the public to see the final mural and the short films. So the whole idea is to engage the public in veterans' lives and experiences as well. So the bottom portion here, unfortunately the artist was not able to make it here tonight, but I can explain a little bit about the mural design. So this was created in collaboration with the VFW and American Legion. The artist attended several meetings and worked with a cohort of different veterans to come up with the design, and they represented all different branches of the military. So in the beginning, the idea was really big, going from World War II to the present. They kind of narrowed the scope a bit. So you can see chronologically, it's sort of addressing Vietnam and then more recently Iraq and Afghanistan. The different branches with the Air Force and Navy are represented here, and 2 of the Iraq soldiers there will be created with braids to look like female soldiers. So that wasn't an issue with Vietnam. There weren't female women soldiers in combat, but there was, there is more recently. So the other thing you can't see that's cut off here is at the bottom there are all the different seals representing different parts of the military, so Navy, POWs, and so forth, and then the American flag. You can't really see it so well from here, but on the paper design, you can see actually where the door, kind of comes up, so you can get a sense of the scope. This is a very large mural. It's very large. And so we anticipate that tourists and veteran families will be able to come by and look closely at the mural, take photos, and it'll become something of a destination. This is on the back side of the Veterans Memorial Building. We reached out to the residents for the new condominium development right there, and we held a public forum at the Veterans building to engage those residents, to talk about the design and get input. Unfortunately, we didn't have the biggest turnout because our meeting was on the final day of the World Series. So we had 4 members attend this meeting, and they were anxious to get back to their TVs. So, but we did get a very positive, feedback from 2 of the residents living there, as well as from the veterans. So, I also just want to make a quick comment about the Public Art Review Committee in that process. So, just a bit of background: the City Council approved a resolution back in the spring to create a Public Art Review Committee that consists of 7 members. A couple appointed by the city, the city youth commissioner, a couple folks from the Arts Council, and a member from the Hollister Downtown Association. This committee met first in September, and we're in the process of establishing policies and procedures, but the committee is working really well. And it's a diverse group of people, both design and arts professionals and kind of bureaucrats, and it was nice to see this mural kind of be the guinea pig for this committee. And it went through, we looked at this design 2 times, and we're able to address a bunch of questions just in terms of the funding and maintenance, and we have a checklist of things to review.
Okay. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Luna?
Just what kind of time frame is that actually the person that's going to paint it? How long will it be before we actually see it?
Yeah, so our absolute deadline to have everything done is May 2017, but we think it's only going to take probably 2 to 3 months. That's the goal. And he's ready to get started.
So it'll be done before Memorial Day, you think?
Yeah, I would think so.
Any other questions? Any of those speaker cards? All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 4-0 with one abstaining.
Sorry.
One abstain.
Oh, Ray. Okay.
Recuse himself. We'll move to item G61, Hollister Air Show report.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. At the council direction, staff met with the Hollister Air Show Committee, and we reviewed the September 19th City Council meeting. I actually played the video of the council meeting for the committee because I didn't want my interpretation of what was said to be different than what was said. So the entire committee saw exactly what was said. And after watching the video, the committee decided that they would be unable to raise the amount of money that would be required to break even. It's an additional $20,000 on top of the annual approximately $8,000 that we raise. I had discussions with the city manager, and he agreed that he didn't feel it was appropriate for city employees to go out and try to raise that amount of money also. And I have been unable to locate an alternative source for the funds. I presented this information to the Airport Advisory Commission on October 26th, and I informed them at that time that I was going to recommend to you that we should cancel the air show because we wouldn't be able to meet that requirement of breaking even. The Airport Advisory Commission was steadfast in their previous opinion. It was a 6-1 opinion that the $20,000 cost to the Airport Enterprise Fund was worth the positive publicity and goodwill that the event generated for the airport. I let them know that I would inform you of what their wishes were, but since I am unable to come up with a source of the $20,000 gap, which was the direction, I'm still recommending to the council that we go ahead and cancel the air show.
Okay. Any questions from council? Any speaker cards?
Yes, Tim Burns.
Good evening, council. To begin with, I want you to know that I had an opportunity to attend the Airport Commission, and I asked them to reconsider their thoughts on canceling this. It's my understanding that it's a well-established event. It continues to get better each year. Unlike the motorcycle rally, it does create a certain positive economic impact of, as I've been told, about $125,000. And as I understand, it's family oriented, and while it may cost $20,000, it's from an enterprise fund that I understand does not have a direct impact on the general fund. And so here we go again, on again, off again, on again, off again. This is clearly a family event. You've got a dedicated group of volunteers on a committee, and you've got a commission, and I would highly ask and encourage you to allow for them to go forward, recognizing that there's a $20,000 deficit. It seems like money well invested based on the information that I'm at least aware of. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No more.
Okay. So this is a report.
Yeah, I'm seeking direction, and then at the next meeting I'll bring back, and I know the deadline's in 2 days, Tom. I'll bring back a resolution either deappropriating the money for next year's air show
or setting the dates and moving forward, whichever you prefer.
So you're looking for consensus to cancel the show?
I'm looking for direction on what you would like to do.
Okay.
I think we spend money on worse things. I think this is one event that I think we should support. I don't think $20,000 for all the goodwill and what we get out of it, I don't think it's a bad idea, and I think we should move forward and continue to try and find alternative sources, but I think just to drop it because of $20,000 is a mistake. That's my opinion.
Any other comments?
This is going to be crass, but the air show's financially is a loser. So that hasn't changed. That's ever since I volunteered for it 5-6 years ago, it's always been a loser. So I think if we're going to continue with the air show, we go moving forward under the idea that it's going to lose a certain amount of money because that's what's been happening. The proof's in the pudding on that. I'd like to cut that number down. The fact that it does come from an enterprise fund, I think that's important. I don't like to see any fund lose money. So I guess my feeling is that I'd like to move forward with continuing the air show, but with some sort of strategy or plan in place that we can cut that number down. I mean, you're not going to make money on it next year, I would imagine, but maybe instead of 20, it's 15, and then the year after that, it's 10. I think with the committee and with your direction and the number of volunteers that are out there, I think that it could eventually break even. But at least from my perspective, I'm moving forward under the assumption that it's not going to make money in the near future.
Any other comments? Councilmember Luna?
Yes, I've noticed that it's been, Mike, now 4 or 5 years that we've lost money?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it 5 years or more?
I think it was 5 out of the 7, yes.
Okay.
1 year we broke even, and 1 year we made a little bit. But that 1 year that we made a little bit, the performers didn't charge us any money.
And I think you've tried different things. I mean, you've tried actually changing the date.
I've tried changing dates. I've cut it back just about as far as you can cut it back and still have a show. We're trying different advertising strategies. I have another one in mind for this year if I'm directed to go do another air show. Another little tweak to the advertising. Drop television, just do radio. Radio seemed to draw people in a little bit better last year. But I think Councilman Clower's statement's correct. Is if we move forward, we need to recognize that it's going to move money. And for every 7 years, the financial impact statement on every report I've given was a possible loss of $68,000. Because I can't guarantee you one person's going to come through that gate. I just can't. I mean, logic tells you one person will show up and pay $10, but I can't guarantee that.
Right, and you've had community input.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some people have spoken before City Council and made phone calls to many of us, but people just don't show up. And I'm thinking, this has been a loss. And another thing, don't you have city employees participating as volunteers as well?
Some city employees.
Are they volunteers or are they paid staff?
Some city employees volunteers, some city employees are paid staff. We do not allow volunteers to handle money, so we pay the finance staff to show up and take the money.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that we understand also, too, is this. Just because it's, and Mike, I'll ask Mike to sort of expand on this. Just because it's enterprise dollars from the airport doesn't mean that there's not a true cost to that. I don't want that to get lost, because what we're saying is that might be a building that doesn't get painted. That might be matching funds that don't get acquired from the FAA. I mean, there is significant cost to losing $20,000 a year over a period of 5 years. If you're talking about a $100,000 loss, that's 10%. That's $1 million that you're not getting in FAA money if you don't have it. Is that more or less correct, or am I completely wrong?
That is correct, but the way the airport budget is structured, our FAA grant money is secured.
Okay.
We currently have matching funds for $20 million in grants. We're programmed over the next 3 to get 12. So that is something that we take very seriously when we put together the airport budget. The previous council was generous enough to create separate dedicated fund balance accounts to secure that, and that all still happens, even spending that. With that said, could I spend $20,000 on painting a building? Sure, I could. Could I spend $20,000 on repaving a street at the airport? Sure. It's the airport commission's opinion that it's better to spend the $20,000 on goodwill with the airport so we don't have noise complaints, people trying to close the airport, etc. Give a little back to the community. But what the city manager said is correct. It is a lot of money after 5 years.
I personally don't see enterprise funds and general funds as really all that different. They're dollars. They're very important dollars. You know, I'll go back to what I said earlier, 2012, 13, we were struggling just to survive here. And we need to always be careful about our dollars. Now, does that mean we can afford $20,000 for the air show? We probably can. Does that mean we can afford it for the motorcycle rally? On and on and on. There's a dollar value to all of this. We have to decide as a council, as a community, how we're going to use those dollars. That's the important part. We can't pick and choose. You know, a comment was brought up that the air show makes $120,000 from different dollars coming in. Well, how much does the rally make? We can't just say this is okay because we like this. This is not okay because we don't kind of like that. Is there a plan? Is there the possibility, as I said a few years ago, to turn the direction around on this? If you're saying absolutely not, well, then our answer is clear. If you're saying maybe we can cut down some more costs and still get some more return, can we use social media as another avenue at less expensive rates to bring in more people? Is the date? What is the issue? We have to be clear on that. Not just that we have to cancel it. It's how are we using those dollars? Can we change it around? Is there that possibility? I think that's what we're looking to hear from you. If you're saying no, there's not a possibility, well, then my answer is no. If there's, I haven't thought about that idea, maybe we can do something, then the answer is yes, because we have a potential. But we have to really lay out that plan and really do some more research on what it is that drives the public in. Because I'll tell you, it's a little disappointing to me that I go out there and a lot of our own citizens aren't even there. They're more of the enthusiasts coming in from out of town. That's disappointing. So again, is it the date? I mean, it's a hard thing for you to figure out. I understand that. But we have to figure out a way to get to the public, get more input to do it right. I don't know if the answer today is no more. As it is let's look at something that can give it some life. Can we cut down on some of the other costs? I mean, do we have to have some things that cost so much money?
Well, I mean, the costs are as low as they could be. I assure you of that.
Okay, but the advertising dollars, if we use more social media on social media, can that help cut the cost?
We used social media in the past, and we got no one who came through the gate cited social media as the reason why they came to the air show.
Okay. So in your opinion, there's just nothing to change it around? Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So then in my opinion, it's going to be no. But what is the consensus of the council? Is there a consensus to move on and continue, or
I think we should
put
do
into
it one more year and see if we can find some alternative funding. And I want to talk to you about that. I think there's some some of these deals that we're doing on our development, where we want people to come in here and build plants and stuff like that, and industrial stuff, and use our airport, maybe they should be kicking in a little bit for the air show. I don't know. We can try and talk to some people.
The microphone, please. All right. Any other comments or consensus to move forward?
Knowing my comments don't carry too much value anymore, it's going to be very, for me, if I were returning for a future meeting, it would be very hard for me to vote no on moving forward with this air show. I'm 100% biased on this, period. So it's hard for me to put together a really, really thoughtful argument to not continue it or to continue it. So I would support bringing this back again in 2017 with the recommendation that the council, as the elected body, consider vetting the budget and looking for alternate ways to potentially bring in the necessary resources, ticket sales, to get this thing off the ground and maybe reconsider it after you get those numbers next year. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I can't support canceling this event. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Luna.
I would just like to say that if there's a possibility that we don't hold it on 2017, maybe we can work on a plan during 17 to bring it back on 2018 so that it works, so that we have the funding. You have the advisory commission from the airport, but what about citizens that have come forward and said they support it? Well, maybe there's some citizens that are willing and have the connection to actually help fund it. But it takes time, and it takes planning, it takes meetings. And from here on to 2017, it may not be possible again, and we'll have another loss. That's the only way that I would agree to keep the air show. Other than that, we're losing money.
Okay, so I think we have a divided council here. Councilmember
I got that much.
Was that? You're almost there. Was your feeling to continue it or to?
I'd like to see it come back, and I think that the sponsorships are going to be a lot easier to create revenue than actually the ticket sales.
I agree with that.
So, I mean, I don't know if it becomes the Z Aero Hollister Air Show on whatever day, or how you do it, or if you got 8 or 10 logos at the end of at the commercial or whatever you run on Facebook or whatever. But I think going after the sponsorships, and this is coming from somebody who does a lot of that with my personal business, it's easier to get that money than it is to get people in the door. And is that great for your air show? I don't know, but I think it floats you it buys you some time to figure out how to get more people through the gates.
Okay, so you have a consensus for another year. You have a consensus for another year.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Move on to 62.
Hey, Tom?
Yes?
Can you throw up this thing real quick?
Yes.
Given the hour at night, I'll do this as fast as possible. Okay. Again, I'm just going to go through this and do it a little bit differently than I've been doing it in the past, and it's really because I answer this question probably 10 times a day. I'm sure that you folks get asked this question on a regular basis, and I really need the council's help to make sure that the right information is getting out there on a regular basis. Again, this is sort of our history. We had a 95 general plan. In 2001, the city council adopted a growth management ordinance, and this is all related to residential development. That ordinance was basically then approved by voters in 2002, and we called that Measure U. So it was a voter-approved initiative for growth management. And really what happened there is it limited the amount of growth to 244 units per year. At 2002, as you all remember, we had a moratorium. At that time, there was 1,197 allocations out there and available for people to develop. The most notable project, obviously, is Award Homes west of Fairview. That project alone had 697, I think, units at that time. It's not working for me, Tom. I got it. Okay. Real quick, that's just our general plan that got updated in 2005 during the middle of our moratorium. It doesn't really mean anything other than I just want to make sure everybody knows that we have that plan. In 2008, the moratorium was lifted by the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the City of Hollister City Council. In 2009, the city started to accept allocations for under the Measure U growth ordinance. This is the first time that we were able to do that. We allocated 709 allocations for calendar years 2008, 2009, and 2010. In 2010, we allocated 488 units under round 2, and that was for calendar year 2011 and 2012. Again, that was another 488, and Measure U sunsetted in 2012. And as you can see there in parentheses, at that time, there was 2,394 units that received some sort of allocation and or approval. What you have here is you have a list, a residential development list. And what's important about this list right now is it has basically the project's name. It talks about where they are in their process, whether they're multifamily, single-family, condos, or whatnot, courtyard units, and then the total number of units. What's important about the next couple of slides is that you don't need to go through each individual one. But what's important is that the ones that are in yellow, are those projects that received an allocation or an entitlement or some sort of entitlement or approval since 2012. Okay? So this is about the last 4 years. Again, this is the complete development list. Just kind of keep an eye on those yellow projects. What we have is this is the development map that you can find on our website. It has the properties. It shows the properties that are have maps. It shows the properties that are in orange are the ones that are actually under construction. And you can start to see the one, and then the ones that are blue are still in the process. Since 2012 and the measure, all those yellow lines that you see in all those projects, the city is only entitled 471 units. That is less than half of what you would have normally gotten under Measure U. So I want to make sure that people don't think, and I need your help in this, is that the city's growing out of control. There's nothing there. I mean, there's no control. I need people to understand that we really have only allocated less than half the number that we would have if we were still under our Measure U growth ordinance. Again, you've seen this list before. This is our building permits going all the way back to 1963. What's important? Come on. Oops. This is the most telling screen. You probably can't see it, and I'll make sure I email this to everybody tomorrow. 2002, you'll see where it's 0000. In 2008, you'll start to see that there is some development occurring. In 2011 is your big year where you actually have 104 multifamily units as well as some single-family units. That was the year that we completed the Vista Meadows Senior Project and the Palm Court Apartments, or West Gateway Palms. In 2015, this is the number that we use based off the DOF of the number of units that are actually in the city of Hollister. So if you added up all the single family, all the 2 to 4 units, all the multifamily, the mobile homes, you get to 10,757 units in the city of Hollister, and that was as of 2015. What this is this was the one that's the most shocking to me, is our growth rate, our overall growth rate from 2008 till now, is that you can see that it's all way less than 1%, except for that 1 year of 2011. It got to 1.62. Now, most people would tell you that a stagnant or slow growth rate in a community is not healthy, and that's absolutely the case. But we are seeing that we are getting healthier, and the reason why I think we're getting healthier is that you're seeing some activity in the community. 2015, we're still at just roughly more than a half a percent in our overall growth rate. And as of September 30th of this year, we've completed 94 homes. This is going to be probably our largest year in a while. Under construction, there's 178. If, by the miracle of God, we had every home completed by December 30th that we had started, we'd be at about, 260 homes? That's still just about 2.5% growth rate, which is far below our 3% that's always been planned in our general plan and moving forward. I won't go through this because, again, it is real late. I just wanted to let everybody sort of know that from annexation to development and sort of the processes that you have to go through and the length of time, because I think the other thing that people don't understand is generally when they see a house going up, they think that we approved it yesterday and somehow it's being constructed, and that's just simply not the case. A lot of these developments take obviously years. They've been in the allocation process for years. So you have your application to the city council approves or denies the application for annexation. We go through the environmental impact report process or the CEPCO process, which can take anywhere from 4 or 5 months to a year. Then we have our public hearings to do our pre-zoning. That's all done by the city council. They finally make their application to LAFCO. Once they go to LAFCO and get approval from that, then it goes back to the planning commission level. And that's when the properties receive their entitlements. After we get the approval from the Planning Commission to move forward, then we begin the final map process and the subdivision improvement agreements, and et cetera. And one of the other things that we need to understand is that when you folks see the subdivision agreements or things of that doesn't necessarily mean you're approving or denying a particular project. By that point, the developer or the property owner already has their entitlements. So essentially that document, the most important thing about that document is that it establishes the bonding criteria to make sure that somebody doesn't walk on us. If they get halfway done with the project, that means that we can continue and finish off the streets or any of the infrastructure that is required as part of that subdivision. That's the most important part of that subdivision agreement. I think that's it, and I apologize that I went through it real quick, but I know it's 10 o'clock at night, and I think most of us want to go home.
You're going to send that to us?
Huh?
You're going to send that?
Yeah, I can send that to everybody. Sure, no problem. I just did it real quick. So, if anybody, I just want to make sure that we all are talking out of the same page, and we're not assuming that everybody is going crazy with the number of homes or sort of this out of control growth. That's the one thing that I want to make sure isn't out there. So.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to have comments, but I want to let the other council members speak first.
Oh, that's okay.
I have public comment too, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Gomez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate that. I think it would be a really, really fine document to have in the cloud somewhere, maybe on the website or something like that. That way we could direct our no-growthers there. I know there's a lot of people in the community that are concerned, and they're seeing a lot of this activity out there. And so I'm not trying to put them down because I'm sure they don't have this information in front of them, right? They can't make that. They see 50 houses going up next to them. They think there's 5,000 houses citywide. So I appreciate it. I think this is all very, very valuable information. And still, I'm not going to lie, to an extent, it's kind of concerning. I think as a community, I think we could grow at a better pace than this. I think this is, from my interpretation, I think this is extremely slow growth. So I think we could do better. I think we also at the same time need to look at the commercial component, industrial, and so on. Not an easy thing to do, but it's definitely something that we need to strive for. So I appreciate the report. Love for you to email this to us, and love for it to be somewhere on our website where we could easily direct our residents to that document when we hear the chirping in the community. Thank you.
Councilmember Clower?
Yeah, I'd also like to say thank you for putting that together. And then I'm just wondering if maybe we could have this 5-minute report like every 6 months or something. That way the document stays up to date and we can kind of track it. Because who knows, maybe the number goes way up and then we need to be aware of that.
I know that Brian and I are sort of working on an annual community services development report, and that will be a component of it, so that you'll see that. And I know that we kind of intended that to be an annual thing, but maybe we can do just a quick quarterly update, like you said, and just make sure that we keep you up to date as often as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Luna?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bill. That was good numbers that we needed to see. And the community at large sometimes gets very confused with the city and the county. So when they see so many homes off Fairview Road and other places, it's always the city. And it's always blamed on the traffic. And so something like this that we can share, I think, is very important. And like Victor said, if we can put it out there, it's even better because we can refer people to the website. So thank you for doing that.
I do appreciate it. But I'm going to say, as I keep saying, I think we need to step back, figure out what we're trying to become, make sure every cost is being accounted for. How are we going to address some of the issues we're facing? How are we going to address the issue of the county vision of growth when they want to build 1,000 homes or 2,000 homes and we're allowing them to do it by providing services? That's an impact. And whether it's county or city, it makes no difference. The numbers are the numbers. And that's really the impact we're facing right now. Some of the poor decisions that were made in some of the neighborhoods are having an impact on us. And it's a different world right now. Unfortunately, everybody is commuting out of town. I don't think any of us saw this impact on 25 that we're seeing right now. I've been surprised by it, and I started becoming aware of it about a year and a half ago. That's why Vice Mayor Gomez and I worked so hard on Measure P, along with everyone else here. We started to see that happening, but the way it has exploded on us is concerning, and we really have to step back and really look at the numbers. What happens if all those projects decided tomorrow that they are going to pull their permits? Now we're not talking 292 houses that were built in a year. We can be talking 600. Plus county, another 600. So I'd like to see us pull back, understand what we're trying to accomplish, make sure every development, as I pointed out before, has that homeowners association, make them take care of their own roads, landscape, everything, and then pay the CFD to pay for the fire and police. So we're not constantly coming back and having to fix issues for neighborhoods as developers are gone. It's a new world. And if we don't start to address it, we're going to have those financial issues in the future. There's just no way around it. We have to be smarter than that now. I think some of the projects that have gone through have some of that or implemented the homeowner associations. But I'm concerned we're trying to go back to this idea of the trees next to the curb, and I'm seeing people put concrete in there already. And these are on some of the new homes. So all these issues that are happening, we have to decide what we're trying to accomplish so we do it right the first time out and it doesn't come back to cost us in 10, 20 years. We have to start looking at some of the affordable housing issues. This is all great, but what are we requiring for affordable housing right now?
Oh, I should have mentioned. I think out of the 417 units that we have built, I think 167 of them were actually affordable. So, I mean, at that time, we were over 20%.
Lucky, right? Yeah, we've been lucky. But what about some of the other projects coming up? If we can incorporate the ideas into a project, we can have better mixed communities within, where you have the single-family homes, you have some townhomes, you have some apartments, and you have some affordable mixed in. So it's not, as in the past, everything should go to the west side of town, let's have communities that are all part of the same community. They're mixed together. We all share in it. I'd like to see really a limit on the number of units. We're over the number of Measure U right now.
No, we've never been over Measure U units.
But the number right now in construction is we're 292 units, right?
There's no limit on the number of building permits that are given in a year. It's about the number of allocations that were given.
Okay.
It's
what
new
I'd
lots.
like to know is why don't we set up a number and just say what that number
Because
is?
once you entitle and our land use attorney here is we're very, very fortunate to have him on board because he keeps us out of trouble. Most communities get sued over land use and human resources, so we're fortunate that we have Brad. And he would tell you, hopefully he will tell you, is that once you entitle a property, it's very difficult unless there's a performance agreement or a development agreement in place that specifically regulates the number of building permits that they pull in a year. It's very difficult to go back to somebody afterwards and say, no, you're only going to pull 20 units this year.
And I agree with you.
Well,
I don't think we can go back. I mean,
Right.
in legal terms, I would agree.
Yeah. So what you're
But
looking
future.
at, right? But you're looking at is 2,400 units right now that are in that situation.
Right. But future approvals that we're looking at, we could take a breather right now, get it right. That's all I'm asking for. Is take some time to do it right.
Yeah.
Understand where the county's trying to go, how we're going to get there as a community, how we're going to implement some of these strategies. There's a lot of work to do here that we can be taking advantage of right now because we do not have the agreement with the county on annexing properties. We should be doing that. We should look at that, hold off on any new approvals, get that figured out. These other projects that have been approved, they're approved. I understand that. They're going to make their way through. But let's step back and answer some of these questions so we don't have the problems in the future. That's what I've been asking for. And that's what I would like to see happen. If that means we have to sit around for several special meetings, so be it. But we shouldn't just kind of dress it up and say, oh, this is all we've done right now, so we're okay. We're not okay. We have an issue between us and the county on how we're trying to grow. And we've got to address it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, I'm not sure exactly where you're going with this. I think I may be more confused after your comments than I was prior to them. But I appreciate it. I respect you and I appreciate your perspective. Another component I just want to mention really quick. Another component that we can't forget about, right? We're talking about residential development. We're talking about residential growth and the concerns that we're hearing from our community. At the same time, I don't think there's much that, as elected leaders, we're doing to drive the local economy. What has this council done in the past couple of years to attract new business to San Benito County? What have we done, and I throw myself in there as well, what have we done to get people off of Highway 25? Mm-hmm. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing innovative happening here to retain our jobs other than Technova and to grow our local employment base. So, again, appreciate your comments, but as a part of the discussion, not only do we need to talk about what you want to talk about, the residential growth, but incorporate some economic development discussions in that as well. I don't want to drive an hour to work, but I do because they pay good and it just happens to be that they have an abundance of jobs in Silicon Valley. I'm sure a lot of those people don't want to commute. I sure don't. So in these discussions that you guys will continue to have over the years, I encourage you to look at ways to invest in economic growth, economic development. You have a very active business council. You have an active chamber of commerce. You have partners in the community that are willing to step up and suggest ideas to the elected leaders on how you could grow our local economy, our job base. Please include that in part of your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Brennan.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and I agree with what Victor is saying, and I'm glad he brought that up. We pay, I think the Hollister Down Sound Association came here and got $50,000 from us to do just that. And that was about 8 months ago, and we haven't seen anything from those people. So we're going down the wrong road with that, and I think we have to change how we're going to do that. I agree that we can't do nothing about the allocations that have already been allowed. And I agree we need to get this tax sharing agreement settled so that the county is not taking all the money and not having any of the responsibilities. So we need to look pretty hard at that. But to bring the economic growth that we need, you can't build a factory in Hollister and put 200 people to work and then tell them they have to commute back to San Martin or Morgan Hill to live because there's no houses in Hollister. So we've got to do all of that in conjunction. If you're going to bring in industry, you've got to bring in, they got to have rooftops to live under. So there's got to be a balance in there somewhere. And 25, everybody says 25 is the big animal in the room. When I moved here in 1992, the person that sold me my house told me in 5 years, not Highway 25 will be saturated. You know, it took 10 years, but there was a number there. It's everybody says it's exploding now because we're building homes. No, we got to that number. That road will only take a finite number of vehicles driving down it. And we've got to that point, and it's not going to change. Now, the state says we need to build a freeway in Irvine that goes nowhere. You don't get any money. What are we supposed to do about that? Build another road? Maybe we can have a developer build another road out there.
I'm all for it.
Out there somewhere. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. But 25, everybody says, oh, 25 is terrible. 25 was going to be terrible 20 years ago. It wasn't. Nothing we're doing today is helping 25 or hurting it. It's already saturated. It can't get any more.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Clower?
Yeah, I think we should have a special meeting. And Mr. Mayor, if you could put together a list of the questions that you have that we need answers to, that would be helpful, just because sometimes I feel like it's a little vague about what you're talking about, and that makes it hard for anybody to respond to your concerns. Because you do have some very legitimate concerns, and I mean, we need to get answers to them. And I think the main thing is you don't find answers until you know what the questions are. And I think that we do need to have some conversations, and there's certain things that have been done by certain developments, and they still get no votes on the subdivision agreements. So I'd like to know what the concerns are, and then figure out how we can make it so the developers, if they want to continue, meet the concerns. That way we do get the best product possible.
I agree. All right. Is there any speaker cards?
Marty Richmond.
As always, I'll make this into a midnight run. Thank you for your time again. This is really important to what I have to say. At least it's important to me what I have to say. It may not be important to you. I appreciate your time. I'm going to cover this up because there's no way I'm going to get it in 3 minutes. Everything everybody said is true, but what you got to do is focus. First of all, one problem is that the county has decided that except for along Union Road, they're going to do all their development around the city with the hopes that we will swallow it up. I mean, we got to be honest about this, so I'm going to speak honestly. That's why I want the timer turned off. They think we're going to swallow it up because they don't want to develop anywhere else. So we got to come to an agreement with the county and say, look, we're not going to swallow it up because it has too much impact on the city without agreement, number one. Number two, for years I've been coming here and talking about putting in use it or lose it and throttled use of allocations in the future. I understand you can't go back, but I've been talking about it for years and I've gotten nowhere. It's all within your hands to do that. You got to tell people, look, if we give you 1,000 homes, we don't want you building nothing for 5 years when there's no market and building 1,000 homes on the 5th year when the market's hot. We'll give you a range, and you need if you want this allocation, you need to agree to build within that range every year so we can get our growth rate smoothed out. We don't want it to look like a shark's tooth like our employment figures around here. Last week or 2 weeks ago, you had I think it was here, you had a lady, a younger woman, younger than me, get up and say, you know, I want all the growth stopped because I have to drive every day to Silicon Valley. I don't even remember her. And she said, I hate to have to do it, but I need the money. And she said, if you only stop building in Hollister, I could drive there. I didn't get a chance to rebut her statement, but listen, if they don't live here, they will live in Gilroy and Morgan Hill. And she said, and it's really busy up in Gilroy and Morgan Hill. So she's going to meet the same people because everyone is going to the same place. They're all going to Silicon Valley. So no matter where they live, I don't care if they're here or in Morgan Hill or in Gilroy or wherever it is, you are going to run into them. So the idea that we can fix the traffic by just stopping here is incorrect. We've got to have a plan, I agree. Do you know that the county has a huge plan for development along Union Road? That's going to make Union Road into a parking lot. I hope you know that. That when you look at the city's plans and the county plan together, the corner of Airline and Fairview and down the road, and I will finish up at Union, is also going to be a parking lot. It's the traffic. Two of you said it. I believe Council Member Luna said it. Someone else said it. Maybe whoever it was. It is the traffic is the problem because that's what people see. They don't see the sewer. They don't see the sewer allocations. And thank you for the extra time. They don't see the sewer allocations. They don't see the water allocations. They come here with excuses. Oh, it's the sewer. No, it's not. It's the water. No, it is, because we wouldn't give them a will serve letter if we didn't have water. What they see is one thing and one thing only, is the traffic. Because a car is bigger than a human. And if you're buying a $600,000 house, you probably got at least 2 cars and maybe 4 cars. And 2 of those are SUVs. So what you've got to do is take those impact fees that come in late, and you have got to solve the local traffic problem. The local traffic problem, because you can't fix 25. That's a state problem. If you fix the local traffic problem with the impact fees, so that people at least get out of town, make the turns, don't have to wait at the schools for 2 hours while they unload, you will get people to stop complaining about it. Because that's all they see. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping us up.
You're welcome. Why don't we? No more speakers, Mr. Chair.
No more speakers. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to item 63, reports from city council members regarding their committees. Councilmember Luna?
I have none.
Councilmember Friend?
I have none.
I don't want to ask Victor. Vice Mayor Victor Gomez.
Yeah, we actually had COG the other day, and we had a discussion on, and we miss you, Mr. Mayor, but we had a discussion on the potential of bringing Caltrain to Hollister. So the discussion lasted like a whopping 3 minutes, and that's not going to happen. And then we went to a discussion, or we're going to enter into a discussion about the Meridian extension. And that was deferred to next month. I think that was per your request, so we deferred that to next month. So that's the only updates.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Clower?
Nothing to report.
All right. My reports. We are working with the Santa Clara VTA, the Mobility Partnership. We're trying to put together a JPA with them. They passed their bond Measure B. Councilmember Gomez would know a lot about this. And part of those dollars will go towards a new interchange at Highway 25 and 101, approximately about $70 million. So now is the time to make sure we do become good friends and see if we can work out a JPA, because that does give us the opportunity to finally fix, unbelievably, part of Highway 25, a joint project which would include 152 and 25. Caltrans would probably participate because 152 is a interregional road for freight, so the state is very interested in that partnership. It's still going to cost us money, but there is potential to do something finally. So we're excited about that. At our AMBAG meeting, Caltrans got a little crazy again and decided that they want to reduce carbon emissions by 80% in the next 5 or 10 years, which was viewed as very unrealistic from all of us at that meeting. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. CalCog meeting in Sacramento, we mainly talked about trying to get the people up there to put down some dollars to fix our roads. But as we all know, that's not going very well either. They have other plans for our dollars. So that is my report. We will go to informational reports now from Council. Councilmember Luna.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended and I helped out with the Veterans Breakfast at San Benito High School on Veterans Day. I believe we had around 200 people there. And so it was a good breakfast. And also, I wanted to request the adjournment of our meeting today or tonight in memory of Lolita Pinuela, World War II veteran, Army veteran. And I believe so many people knew Lolita. And it just so happened also that my nephew Bobby, Lujan, who actually helped the Veterans Breakfast during Veterans Day, passed away on Monday. And I know he was there and being so sociable with all the veterans and actually thanked the veterans for their service. And it was sad that we lost him at the age of 57. So I just want to say that, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And also that I'm going to miss Victor Gomez on the City Council. And thank you, Victor, for the knowledge that you have for the city, and that you many times, you were the one that actually made motions that made us really consider what we were doing here in the City Council. So thank you, Victor.
Councilmember Friend?
Yeah, I just want to echo Mickey's sentiments. I've never sat up here without Victor sitting up here, so it's going to be a different makeup on the council, and I hope the new member is going to be as helpful as Victor was. And I've enjoyed having him here with us, even though we didn't see eye to eye every time, but we did a lot. So it was great, and the city's better off because you were here. So take that with you, and eat a lot. Have a good time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Councilmember or Vice Mayor Gomez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna reserve my my comments till to the December 5th. I'll say this: I truly do appreciate the time spent up here. It's been exciting. When I was 29 years old when I decided to run. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I coming from my grandfather. My grandfather, a lot of people don't know this, but my grandfather was the mayor of our hometown of Villa Obregón, Jalisco, Alto Jalisco, and my father was the mayor of that same town. He became a sheriff and became the sheriff and became a judge in Alto Jalisco as well. And then my brother Gus became mayor of the city of Glendale as well. And so I almost felt obligated to run for public office to an extent. But as I told my daughters, somebody's going to have to carry that torch and be the fifth Gomez mayor in the family, fifth generation. But I've appreciated the opportunity to serve the residents of District 4. It's been exciting. and definitely an opportunity, all kidding aside, that was a tremendous value to me personally. I hope it benefited the community. I know that the city is, when Reagan was running for president in 1980, he asked that question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I hope people could answer that question and say yes. They are better than they were 8 years ago. It's not an easy job to be in up here. You're constantly criticized, supported, thanked, punched, whatever, but not physically. But it's a wonderful experience, and I wish my colleagues up here all the best as you continue forward. And I offer my my congratulations to my replacement, Mr. Sims. Congratulations on your victory. The only scary part is that now I'm your constituent, and that could be problematic at times, I'm sure. But I'll say this: don't hold your breath. There's a rabbit in the hat.
Ooh. Councilmember Clower.
So I'll join the party and thank Councilmember Gomez. I don't have a tear to shed. I shed it back in August when you said you weren't running. Two things in the two years I spent up here with you. You seem to be the swing vote a lot of times, and that's not easy. So I commend you on that. And then another thing which I'm still working on is you never shied away from making your opinion known. And that's even harder. So I appreciate your gusto and everything you've done the last 8 years. And then in terms of reports, I'd like to see if we can set up this crazy idea. It's called having goals. And this is the time of year where you start making goals for the next year. So I'm hoping that maybe in either December or maybe it's better in January, but we have a special meeting, and it's going to be hard, but we'll hash out what our priorities are. We'll set some goals. Maybe we then make up some plans to accomplish those goals, so we're not being so reactive. Because I feel, honestly, I got knocked way back off of what I was thinking I wanted to do by the medical marijuana thing, and I lost 8 months of my agenda. So I don't want to see that happen to me again. I don't want to see that happen to the city, the council. So if we could have it'll probably take two special meetings to set priorities, set goals, come to some sort of consensus, and then maybe mid-year we look and see how we're doing, and then at the end of the year we see if we actually got anything done. I know it's a little radical, but
we did
measurable, smart. So
just so you know, we did have retreats when we were first on here, and 6 months later we looked at the goals and said, "Well, we didn't do any of them, so why have the retreat?"
Well, I haven't been on the retreat yet, so hopefully it'll be a little different. But yeah, if we could do something like that, I don't know what it would look like.
Well, we spent no expenses. We went to the Veterans Hall.
We'll take a retreat.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it sounds like something that we could do. So Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank LULAC. I did attend the breakfast, and there was quite a few people there, and the veterans for their ceremonies at their home. I'm going to miss my sparring partner, Vice Mayor Gomez. A very worthy opponent. I'm not about to spar with the new person there. I'm going to leave that one alone. But I do appreciate everything you've done, Victor. You made the comment, are we better off? Now we are. And a lot of that has to do with you, Council. I remember those first days of looking at those numbers and wondering, wow, this is bad. And how quickly we came together to turn those numbers around. And I appreciate your vision and all the work you've done and we've done together, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
City Manager.
Nothing really to report other than, again, next Monday, please be prepared. We're going to be discussing sewer rates, and we'll now discuss the motorcycle rally. I also want...
5 o'clock.
Do we set for 5 o'clock on Monday? I think we did, yes, 5 o'clock. I also want to... where was I? We will try to put together something for a goals and an objectives meeting sometime in December. Probably makes some sense. We don't meet the first meeting in January, as you know, and really it kind of ties towards it. It was kind of appropriate that Councilman Clower mentioned it because I think it ties nicely into the Measure W folks and the way that vote came out. Clearly, you folks have this community support 100%, or at least close to 80%. And one of the things that I get the feeling of is that I don't want you folks to be approached like a cousin that just won the lottery. That's not where your position is. Your position is that this is not new money. We've said this from the beginning. It's money to sustain sort of the direction that the City Council wants to go. And one of the things that's important about setting goals and objectives, and we've talked about this several times, is being able, when we bring items to Council, how does that item achieve one of your goals or one of your objectives, and that's what is important. And I think that's one of the things that we as staff need to be able to provide to you on a pretty regular basis. So I appreciate that, and I think we'll try to get something together so that we can really get those goals and objectives. And again, one of my big things is I don't necessarily need to have us come out of there saying, oh, economic development and housing. Duh. I mean, that's always going to be the goal. I want there to be something that we can try to actually achieve, something that is that a true measure that we can actually achieve. So with that said, I wish everybody a happy holiday.